Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd. We are going to talk about the phases in development of Islamic economic thought. So we learn about all those necessary background checking. We have done it. So we learn about how exactly that we should locate the Islamic economic thought. We understood the whole area. We find the location. I think we found the location. Now we are going back to that particular subject, which actually we are going to cover from sixth, I think the 7th century until until today actually. But we will specifically go and talk about um, the work, how it was done, starting from 632 AD until 15th century, right? Until 15th century. So it's gonna be like from 7th until 15th century, almost like 800 years of work. So today what we're gonna see, what are they and what are the periods, how we actually can categorize or classify those periods. There are many methods into those classification of the periods. Some of them want to say it's 3 periods, some of them 4 periods, some of them they say six, more than 6 periods. It depends on the historian how they look into, because it's not that easy to put everything into category, right? Because when historians looks into the past, the facts, and the stories and the writings and everything, they want you to understand without any complex. But as a history student, you should know that there is not necessarily there should be a pattern in history. Let's say, last time Adura was saying that, when we talk about the colonization, so it depends on the 3G, right? You said gold, you said the 3 things. So, yes, of course, in order to make you understand, they actually form a certain words and sentences so that it's easy for you to memorize. But not necessarily it has to be on the pattern, because objectively speaking, um, anything can happen in the past. Like whatever happening today, today's present is actually tomorrow's past. Am I right? So when after 50 years, maybe your great grandparents, sorry, grandchildren want to learn about the history of Malaysia, just imagine how they really want to put it together. So will they understand the complex, the things now going on in the current political movements? Like, we have this, we have that, we have this front, we have that front came into existence, and right now we have this political agenda is going, the things are happening back in America. So if someone has to tell you after 50 years, let's imagine if you're alive, after 50 years to talk about this history, it's full of complex. It is full of complex. I mean, you can't clearly find the picture because things are happening. It doesn't make any sense since are happening some other place. So they can only narrate what happened. This is one way of narrating, but you won't see any pattern when they're narrating. There is another way of narrating. They put everything into, like for example, 3Gs. For example, they say phases like classical, contemporary, modern, But each and every time they have classical, contemporary, modern. I mean, today you call it modern. Today you call this era as a modern era. You go to someone, you woke up someone from the grave like 1,000 years ago and ask him which era you are living. He will tell, I am living in modern era. Right now 2020, right? So you go back to 1020 and you ask someone what era you are living. He will say, I'm living in modern era. For him, that is the modern era. I just want to tell you because I want to be very honest in this class. Because there are so many examples actually I can give, but I don't have to because I don't have to cover the entire world history. Let's just talk about our own history, all right? Our own history, all right? Let's say Muslim history. How do you remember the Muslims' history? You remember that it's Khilaf is Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Then you have Khulafa al-Rashidin. We call them four caliphs. Al-Khulafa al-Arba'a. You can call it Imam Hazrat Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. Then you say that who next after that, you may call it is Umayyad. Then you call it after Umayyad, Abbasid. They came after Abbasid, and then you will tell is Ottoman. So this is how the historians, came into the summary of the history of 1,000 years. So how do we say? Because we have to tell you the story of 1,000 years in one paragraph. Then this is the best I can do. Prophetic period, Khulafa Rashidin period, Umayyad period, Abbasid period, and then Ottoman period. But more you go into the history, you dig into history, keep on digging and digging, then you will find that somebody is the Khalifa of Umayyad, was actually ruling a part of Dimishq. At the same time, there is another Khalifa from Abbasid was ruling the other part of the world. So if I tell you, because you will see it, because later when we learn about the scholars and their history, we need to talk about each and every scholar's background and the history of the time. Then you will surprised to see that it's not actually Umayyad, then Abbasid, then Ottoman. It is actually Umayyad. While Umayyad was there, Abbasid was there. And Abbasid slowly growing and growing until they started, they started hitting, and then they started making the Umayyad fall. Then Abbasid was there for some period, and then there are so many other dynasties came in. It could be Ayyubid, it could be Fatimid, it could be Hashimid, so many. Because Ottoman all came later. Later from the Turkey, Ottoman came, and then, So I'm just trying to tell you there are many complex in history when we talk about, and historians just wanted to tell you so that you can memorize it in a summary, in a way that you can understand. But history is what we are actually living today, as complex as it is today. Today, let's say you want to talk about the Malaysian history, Malaysian political history. Just imagine in what way you will make understand what's going on now, right? For example, within this 10, 20 years, currently what's happening, it will be much complex to talk about. But historians, they don't want to talk about complex things because it will make you bored. It will bore you. So they don't want to become the boring person. So they only show you the good thing and then make you happy. Like the movie, for example. You go back and you see any movies, historical movies, of course. I know you like it. So let's say in India we have a movie like Jodha, Akbar, for example. Like they are talking about the Mughals and everything, but it's really complex story. But they only show you the good side of it, and then they want to make you believe it. This is what actually Akbar was actually was happily. I mean, he was happily marrying a non-Muslim, and then the thing was there, this and that. So um, he was trying to bring harmony between Muslims and Hindus and this and that. The one Aurangzeb was the one who actually the good true Muslim king, but he was actually portrayed as a villain in Mughal Empire, right, by historians. So this is what actually I'm just trying to tell you before we get into all these things. So what is important? It is not actually the people. It is not actually the time. What is important is actually the subject, right? You don't have to concentrate on much on the period and the time, and then make yourself just give some justification. Okay, after this, rather than you do that, you learn everything, but you remember the subject. What was the subject? And slowly, what is the flow of that subject? How it was actually itself expanding to another area, and then how it came today, how it came into existence today. So this is how actually you need to look into the history of Islamic economic thought. All right. So with that note, let me just tell you. So I told you about uh, uh, the literatures, of course. All right. So now I'm going to talk about the formation period. All right, which we call formation period, but I don't want to tell exactly from when to when, because if I tell you exactly when to when, then I myself is actually not making I'm not myself making justifying what I was telling you before. So I'm just telling you the idea of the formation period is actually it's very very obvious, because we had a Quran as a revealed knowledge. All right. So this is where actually we start. If you want to talk about Islamic knowledge or Islamic heritage, you should have the starting point. We also accept other knowledge before Prophet ﷺ. There were, of course, those are the knowledges, but it didn't become our Sharia, right? The Old Testament and the New Testament, and also Zabur, we call Torah, Zabur, and Injil. It didn't become our Sharia. So Quran became our Sharia. So we start talking from the revealed knowledge, which is actually Quran. So Quran was revealed to Prophet ﷺ for 23 years. That is the beginning point. From there, you have Sunnah. So when you talk about Sunnah, you have to understand Sunnah is not exactly what we call today Hadith. Hadith and Sunnah, you need to understand the differences. A Hadith is actually something that what the Muhaddithun, the compilers of the Hadith, they started compiling, and they compiled as a book, and then inside the book, whatever it is actually Hadith. You can call it Hadith. But when you talk about Sunnah, Sunnah is something, is actually a tradition. You know, in that Sunnah, you have the tradition of Prophet ﷺ, how he dealt with non-Muslims who actually have a different values, who brought, maybe some of them they brought the Greek philosophy, some of them they brought the Christian philosophy, or the the Judaic philosophy. All right, because these are the religions, these are the ideas been there when Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, right? So Prophet ﷺ quite often asks the Jewish, what is the ruling in your according to Torah, right? And then he used to call Ibn Mas'ud to read Torah for him, because he learned the language, the Hebrew language, so that he can learn, he can talk, he can give some meaning translation. So the translation already starting from, there was Abdullah ibn Salam who used to be the rabbi and then he became Muslim. He knows everything about the Torah. Then Hazrat ibn Mas'ud, he also learned Torah. So what I'm trying to tell, when it comes to Sunnah, you have to look into that manner. Whatever Prophet ﷺ actually dealt, and then whatever the companions they learned from the Prophet, and whatever that they actually spread among others, these are actually Sunnah. Because Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not let anyone compile the hadith, because he was, of course, it's a very valid instruction from the Prophet. Prophet didn't want to mix whatever he says together with Quran. That's why even Prophet ﷺ didn't want Quran to be compiled, because he wanted all the Hufaz, they have to remember Quranic verses, right? And later only Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he started compiling Quran because there was a need. But again, during the Prophet ﷺ and during the companions, the life of the companions, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, the hadith was not compiled. In fact, even in fact, one moment, Hazrat Abu Bakr was having some compilation of the hadith and he didn't give it to anybody. Instead, he actually destroyed the compilation because he doesn't want anybody to add whatever Prophet saying into Quran. You understand the point? That's the reason why, because he doesn't want to bring another Bible, because Bible is actually not only the God's word, it's also the companions, it's also the prophets, it's also the other prophets, it is also the companions, it is also some other ulama of Christianity. Everybody's becomes together as a Bible. So you need to understand that Sunnah is something that actually whatever Prophet ﷺ left the tradition, because when he was about to die, what he was saying, taraktu fikum amrayn lan tadillu. Prophet said that I'm going to leave two things. One is the Quran, the other one is my Sunnah, right? So when Prophet said I leave my Sunnah, he didn't make it into book and then give it to you. He said, I taught you, I made you do it, I made you think, so that whatever you do, it becomes Sunnah. So then Prophet said, khairu qarni qarni, thumma alladhina yalunahum, thumma alladhina yalunahum. Prophet also said, the best century is my century, my people, then who follow them, then who follow them. Tabi'in and tabi'in. So this is actually the formation period. Yeah, this is the formation period actually we are talking about. So when it comes to economics related matters, it is actually mostly internal sources. It is not actually in external influence. For example, it was like in Greek philosophy. In Greek philosophy, it was external influences. But most of the Islamic philosophy is actually internal sources of internal influences, so that how everybody behave, how companions behave, how companions decide on one thing. You know, these are the things where actually became economic related matters, so that one day Imam Abu Yusuf was able to compile Kitab al-Kharaj. Imam Shaybani was able to compile Kitab al-Kasb, right? This is what we are talking. They didn't only just compile, the hadith and the Quranic verses. They compile the practices, the hikmah of the people, and then they were able to relate to the Quran. Like I was saying, Ahnaf, always Hanafite, they always have these things very clear. They always see the differences between Quran and Sunnah, right? Because Quran is actually qata'i, right? Quran is actually something that revealed to us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then whatever the Sunnah is there, Sunnah is always should be supporting, because it is a mubin, bayan for Quran. It has to be supporting the Quran. If there is anything contradict the Quran, if there is any contradict Sunnah is there, which is against actually, if it is against the Quran, then it has to be moderately adjusted according to the Quran. right? It cannot be the other way around. All right. So this is what they are very clear. That's the reason why they have difference in rulings. For example, they have wajib, they have farad, right? They have haram, they have makruh tahrimi. All right. So these are the differences because, for example, they have the differences between khabar al-ahad. If there is a hadith, the hadith something about hukum, something about halal and haram, and if that hadith is being narrated by a single sahabi, not more than one, then it is called khabar al-ahad. So according to Hanafi, this khabar al-ahad cannot become to the level of halal and haram. Instead, it can become wajib or makruh tahrimi. If it is a good thing, if it is a do's, then it becomes wajib. If it is a don'ts, then it becomes makruh tahrimi. Right? It cannot become, the farad, or it cannot become the haram. So these are the differences are there. So that's the reason how they can understand. They were able to write something because most of the economic related matters, requires to understand the sunnah. You cannot simply open Quran and then open few hadith and then try to see the connection. You need to look into sunnah. You need to look into people's life. You need to look. You need to go to the market. That's why most of the books written by, the Hanafis is actually they were actually the business people. For example, Imam Abu Hanifa, he was actually a trader, right? He was actually a trading businessman, right? So many people, for example, Imam Abu Yusuf was a judge, right? And so many other people were in the other ulama, for example, even from Maliki Mazhab, even from Hanbali Mazhab and Shafi'i Mazhab, whoever written something in economic related matters, they were able to see the sunnah everywhere that they started compiling together. All right. So now the formation period, as I told you, it comes from Quran and Sunnah. Then you have also those people who we call fuqaha. From Usul al-Fiqh, we have Zayd bin Ali, we have Abu Hanifa, we have Imam Malik, we have Imam Shafi'i, we have Mohamed ibn Hanbal. So whatever the things that they talk about fiqh, also consider economic related matters. Then you have some particular economic related topics. For example, Imam Abu Yusuf wrote Kitab al-Kharaj, Imam Muhammad Shaybani wrote Kitab al-Kasb, right? And then Imam Yahya bin Adam also wrote something on taxes, right? Then we have Imam Abu Ubaid, he wrote Kitab al-Amwal. Imam Abu Ubaid, Kitab al-Amwal. Then we have Ibn Abi Dunya, Ibn Abi Dunya, he wrote on Islah al-Mal, right? Then we have Abu Bakr al-Khalal. He wrote many things on, particularly on business and economic activities in general. And then these are the people also started, some ideas. This is where actually you can get many ideas where it was started, later it was, ongoing and completed. For example, market and industry regulations. So these are the writings. If you look into the previous, the formation period writings, then you will see the list of ideas. For example, market and its regulation, supply and demand, also price fixation, right? Money, the nature of the money, the credit instruments, also of course riba, interest and everything. Then the tabadul, they call it commodity exchange, right? And then al-kharaj, the taxation. And then you have public finance, you have a fiscal policy, right? You have agricultural relations, and then of course zakah, inheritance, miras, and so on, property as well. These are the things where the ideas in many places you don't see it like each for one book, but these are the ideas were available in throughout in their writings, right? Okay, this is actually what we call it formation period. And then you may also call it, foundation from the early period of Islam. Then you have the translation period, right? This is the foundation period, right? You can actually I will inshallah send you the updated slides after this. Yeah, inshallah. So this is the idea I just want to give it to you, but mostly please also note down my notes. So when it comes to the assessment or exam or whatever it is, so don't just rely on only the slides, because I give you more than slides. Also, please also take my notes, and don't worry if you missed it. Do not worry, because I already recording it and I'm going to put it in the YouTube channel. And as I did last classes, I already put it in the YouTube channel. So anytime you can go back and read, and sorry, you can listen from there. All right. So these are the things are there. Some other scholars also, which I didn't mention, for example, Harith bin Asad al-Muhasibi, al-Makasib, Ways of Earning a Livelihood. Mawardi is a book. Okay, I will come back to that. Then you have the translation phase, and then you have the retranslation phase. Yeah. Okay. So I will just give you some other ideas about translation period. Okay, this is where you need to know how we actually open our door. So I'm talking about the translation period after the formation period. We need to know how we opened the door, how things came in, and what exactly we did after things came in. Is it exactly we portray the thing as it is, or we opened the door, we got it, and then we actually did some research on it, and then we put it in the right order, then we gave it to the world. I think the second thing, that is what happened. So let's see, if you want to talk about the translation, it started actually, like I told you just now, right? Ibn Mas'ud, for example, I started even early before than this, because it was considered 8th century to 11th century where centuries where the translation period. But I'm just, I tell you again, not necessarily has to be the same number, right? As I told you, that's why I gave you the introductory talk. I gave it to you. How do you understand history? So, but it started even way before, like I told you, Ibn Mas'ud, and also during Hazrat Umar, Khalifa Umar. This Sahabi, I think, do you know them? You know him, Khalid bin Walid. We call him Saifullah. Khalid bin Walid, actually, he started, he was in Syria, and he actually started talking about Diwan. The word diwan is actually, today we call it office, but the word diwan is not Arabic word. It's a Persian word. So now Khalid bin Walid already started the administrative office by the name of diwan. There was another Sahabi by the name of Al-Hurmuzan, right? Al-Hurmuzan also being called that the first person who actually introduced the word diwan into Khalifa Umar's period. Right? It's a Persian word for register or office. These are the words being used those period in Iraq and Syria until Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Abdul Malik bin Marwan is the Khalifa of Umayyad. Most probably, I think the second or third Khalifa of Umayyad. Um, so in that period, that is what actually 8th century is all about. 8th century, Abdul Malik bin Marwan was there because his father was Marwan ibn Hakam. Marwan ibn Hakam was the governor, and Muawiyah, the Sahabi Muawiyah, actually was ruling while Hazrat Ali was a Khalifa. So now you can see in this way, you can see that we have Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali. There was a problem when Umar, Hazrat Uthman anhu, was killed, was murdered. That was the first fitna started in Islamic history. Even Prophet ﷺ already told this. Prophet ﷺ already told this, he already told to Uthman, by the end of your life, there will be fitna will start. So when Hazrat Uthman was killed, the fitna started. The Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan, I think you know him also, because Muawiyah was another great scholar, a great Sahabi. Hazrat Muawiyah was the son of Abu Sufyan. I think you know Abu Sufyan, if you know about the Battle of Badr, and if you know the story of the one who went to see Hirkal. If you look at the story of Hirkal, Hirkal received a letter from Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, asked Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked him to accept Islam. Um, it was a Habasha, I think, Hirkal or Habasha, either one. So, so while he wanted the king wanted to make sure the writing of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he asked, "Is there any Makkah Quraysh is there in his country?" Then Abu Sufyan was there, and then together with him there are some other people. So the king asked Abu Sufyan to come in front, and then the other people go back. And then he asked few questions to Abu Sufyan, and then he said, "You have to tell the truth. If you didn't tell the truth, the people behind you will, will knock their head, and then we will understand whether you are telling the truth or not." So he was asking about Prophet, and Abu Sufyan has to tell the truth because the people behind. So that was the story. Maybe you can see some videos out there already. Anyway, so he's Abu Sufyan. He also was the son. He was also one of the great leader of Makkah, especially during Badr. And then he was also happened to become, because Prophet ﷺ, married to his daughter. So mashallah, Abu Sufyan, later he became the father-in-law of Prophet ﷺ. So now remember, Abu Sufyan, his daughter Habiba, I think Habiba is one of the Prophet's wife. And Habiba's brother's name is, Habiba's brother name is Muawiyah. So now you can see how close is Muawiyah, because Muawiyah is also in other way is very close to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Because why? Because Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's grandfather and Muawiyah's grandfather, they are actually brothers. So they are coming from the same family. So like people say Hazrat Ali, of course, very close to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. At the same time, Muawiyah also, he was very close according to merit. I mean, what they call it. There's a two kind of relative, right? One is actually because of the marriage. The other one is because of the lineage. So now he also very close. So now, because Hazrat Uthman was also a family of Muawiyah. So Muawiyah wanted Hazrat Ali to look into those people who killed Hazrat Muawiyah, Hazrat Uthman. And you know, when Hazrat Uthman was actually conquered by for 40 days, because Hazrat Uthman didn't want to fight those people who actually surrounded his house. After 40 days, he was killed. Because Hazrat Uthman said, "I don't want to kill my own people." So he accepted the fact that he will be killed. But other people, they started questioning, and they started questioning the next Khalifa, who was Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, and they started questioning Hazrat Ali, asking that, you have to get a revenge of those people who actually killed Hazrat Uthman. And when Hazrat Ali also didn't want to fight because Usman himself didn't want to fight, then they started another group and they want to fight against, those people who killed Uthman radiallahu anhu. Again, also they also wanted to fight against Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. That's how Umayyad, they came into existence. So Umayyad, the first actually Khalifa, again, it's starting from Hazrat Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan, also another great Sahabi. So you can understand here Hazrat Ali also on the right way, Hazrat Muawiyah also in the right way. Cannot say that these people wrong, these people wrong. The circumstances make them into a different party, but both of them, they are actually in haqq, right? So that's the reason why there are many ulama, they wrote about Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu, because Muawiyah he has never been a bad person. He's a Sahabi, one of the great Sahabi. He has done so many things. He's been in many places as a governor during Prophet ﷺ period. So that's how the fitna started. Then you have Umayyad. Umayyad was there, like this one, Abdul Malik bin Marwan, also one of the co-brother of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Then later they had Walid bin Abdul Malik, Hashim bin Abdul Malik. Then the monarchy started from there after some time. Then the Abbasi also came during the time. So later, inshallah, we will talk about the other dynasties. So here I wanted to give you this idea of, how this translation came into existence. So like I told you, the word started and remained until Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Then you have another one bin Yazid. His name also Khalid bin Yazid. Khalid bin Yazid, another person who actually started systematic beginning of translation. And those time during that Umayyad period, many scholars has been received from India, Persia, Rome, and Greece. Later, in during the Abbasid period, there was a full-fledged Bait al-Hikmah. It's called Bait al-Hikmah. Bait al-Hikmah is the name of the institute where they do the translation and adaptation of the Persian, Indian, and Greek scientific works. This is what they do. The areas of medicine, astronomy, art, philosophy, and management of state, management of the state, political state, and economy, management of household economy, everything has been captured until 11th century, right? So now you can see that what was happening from 8th century to 11th century, okay, quote unquote, 8th to 11th century. I'm just giving you some name, some centuries name, but it could be more than that. But what I'm trying to tell you that Islahi was able to capture all this, and then Islahi able to tell that what was the impact of these translations, what was the impact of these translations on Muslim scholars. So now you have so many scholars, right? They have so many scholars. And then you also got the Institute of Translation started. They started from Hazrat Umar and then started Umayyad, and then during Abbasid period, it's a full-fledged, as I told you, the institution of Bait al-Hikmah was there. So now there were so many books has been translated, works has been there. All right. So now how these books, translations, gave some impact to Muslim scholars. What was the impact? So Islahi was able to get 5 types of Muslim scholars. 5 types of Muslim scholars. The first type of the Muslim scholars who rejected all Greek ideas altogether. They don't want to accept anything. They don't want to accept any Greek ideas, any foreign ideas. Those were the muhaddithun, right? Like for example, starting from Imam Bukhari or Imam Muslim, those are the muhaddithin. They didn't actually fall into these ideas like foreign ideas. So they didn't accept all those things. They were doing whatever that they have, for example, because they were completely busy with their work of collecting hadith, right? And then the traditionalists like Akinani, Al-Farra, Al-Sarkhashi, Kinani, Al-Farra, Al-Sarkhashi. These are the people who never accept Greek ideas. The second types of group who try to distinguish between ideas that are beneficial and acceptable and between those that are contravention of Islamic faith. So now they look into the foreign ideas and then they started distinguishing, okay, this idea has a problem with Islamic belief. This idea has no problem with Islamic belief. So they understood because they learned everything from the translation from the foreign language, and then they started analyzing critically, and they started seeing the water and the milk. Can you find the water inside the milk? By looking, you cannot find it, right? Because when you add water, it's still milk, look like milk. So these are the people who can distinguish. So these are they wanted to prove Islamic supremacy over Greek thought, of course, by looking into the differences, by distinguishing. They still wanted to prove Islamic supremacy. That is the point. They still want to. They learn about everything, but they never say that Greek thought is superior than Islamic thought. No, they didn't say. They said Islamic supremacy over Greek thought, but they also want to synthesize if possible. Yeah, you see, This is amazing. I was hearing this last week. MashaAllah. This is one of my guru, one of my professors that I took many subjects with him. Tansri Professor Usman Bakar, right? Usman Bakar from Istag. He was giving a talk, mashallah, very nice one. He said that, this is the idea of, Einstein. What Einstein said, he said that um, religion without science, and then science without religion. Right. So he was giving the example of, he said that science without religion is a blind, and then religion without science is actually like a handicap or something, right? The same idea, it was Albert Einstein we are talking, but the same idea was given by many other Islamic scholars centuries ago. Starting from Al-Farabi, Imam Ghazali was the one who said this. He said about Sharia rather than religion. He will use the word Sharia. And then we have Imam Farabi. Al-Farabi, he used the word hikmah against sina'ah. Because sina'ah, those days, can be translated today is technology. Right? So sina'ah without Sharia, or Sharia without sina'ah. Right? So it's like we discussed earlier about faith versus philosophy, right? Religion versus science, or philosophy versus theology. So these are the things already there. I'm just trying to get this thing here. So this is actually what happened those time. This is actually what happened those time. Uh, you have many kinds of Muslim scholars. They had an impact on these translations coming from the Greek philosophy and others. So the second type I told you, who try to distinguish to prove Islamic supremacy over Greek thought. So, but they also want to synthesize if possible. If anything Aristotle said, and they want to synthesize, they can synthesize. They didn't want to just throw away. They want to synthesize if possible. So this is where actually you can see the we talk about scholasticism, but this one you can say actually Islamic scholastics idea, or you can say scholastic theologians of Islam, or you can call them mutakallimun. Like in Arabic, we call them ahlul kalam, mutakallimun. Who are they? Examples: Mawardi and Imam Razi, and the most best one among them is Imam Ghazali. So Imam Ghazali, Razi, Mawardi, these are the people who were able to see the differences, and then but still they want to prove Islamic supremacy over the Greek thought. All right. Then we have the third section, the third kind of people who were deeply influenced by Greek ideas. They were very much into Greek ideas. Like today, mashallah, we have people very much into modern science. Yeah, like that. So who are deeply influenced by Greek ideas, and to interpret Islamic articles in such a way as to accommodate alien philosophical ideas. So these people, we call them Muslim philosophers, al-falsafiyun of Muslimun al-falsafiyun, Muslim philosophers. They were deeply influenced, and then they also were able to interpret Islamic articles in such a way that can accommodate these philosophical ideas. In a way that maybe the supremacy part is actually not there. Maybe they didn't want to prove Islamic supremacy over Greek thought. Maybe they want to say it's all the same thing. They want to talk about the figure of God, or they want to talk about the vision of God, and then they bring the same philosophy that they know, they want to bring it together. So these were the examples where Al-Kindi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Haytham. Right? Al-Kindi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Haytham. So remember, these are the scholars I'm telling you, I'm giving you the name. But remember this, there is a, mashallah, group of ulama today that who actually don't want to believe anything that what they said. There are a group of people in the world, they don't want to accept anything from Hindi, anything from Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina, maybe, he is mashallah Avicenna, we call him the people, Tibbun Nabawi, the one who wrote medicine. There are also a group of people who actually completely reject what Ibn Sina says, because they say that he had a different thought in Aqidah. Even though his medical sciences is appreciated, but still his philosophy in belief system is different. So people are there. So don't get confused when people give you different. As I told you, history is full of complex. All right. So there is no truth, there is no false until you will see everything in the hereafter. Right. So maybe perhaps you can have your appointment scheduled. So maybe prepare your schedules for appointments when you go to the next life. Maybe one day you keep it for Al-Kindi, the other day you give it for Ibn Sina. All right. Make sure that you talk to the secretaries of Kindi and Ibn Sina and Imam Ghazali. If you want to take 6 months or one year with Imam Ghazali, maybe it's not even enough, and then you go for it, and then you sit with them and you talk to them, because you have plenty of time. You will have plenty of time in paradise. All right, you don't have any other work to do, so better you fix your appointments now. All right, before it's dead. All right. Okay, so three branches of Greek philosophy. Okay, so these are the third kind of people who actually brought um, three different branches. It's actually inspired by Greek philosophy. They brought these three branches of knowledge inspired from Greek philosophy. They said ilmul akhlaq about characters, behaviors. Then ilmul siyasa about politics, right? So the discipline, you can see that behavior and then politics. And then the last one, which is actually related to us, ilm tadbir al-manazil. Ilm tadbir al-manazil, which is the science of household management, right? We also talked about it, the household management according to Greek philosophers, right? So extended to embracing market price, monetary supply and demand phenomena, and hinting at some of the macroeconomic relations. These are the thing, from where actually, especially the ilm tadbir al-manazil, this is where they were able to discuss discuss the market price, monetary supply and demand phenomena, everything. All right. Let's go to the fourth type of people. The fourth type of scholars actually called Sufis and Ahlut Tasawwuf. All right. I think some of you are very much into it. Maybe your favorite, maybe. The Sufis and the Ahlut Tasawwuf, they are some of them advocating a life of course, they say, everything is too much. If there is something that over, if you are into it, if there is something more than your need, actually you have to go away from it. So these are the Sufis, and especially they are the Zahid, you can say Zuhada, the people who practice Zuhud. So Zuhud is not something bad, let me tell you, because if you if you have a pant and then you are using it as your favorite pant, and suddenly the pant is actually, it's somewhere actually it cannot be used, and maybe it's tear down. You instead you throw that and you buy the new one, you go and then you stitch it, you do stitching and then you use it again. It is part of zuhud. I think I know some of us already practicing zuhud. Yeah, because we don't want to waste another resources. We want to use whatever we have until it can be used, right? Remember when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu was a Khalifa, when Hazrat Umar was a Khalifa and he was standing and giving khutbah, and people saw more than 17 patches. 17. We are talking about the president of United Arab, uh, whatever it, more than the United Arab, it's not whatever today we have. It's completely looking into the whole Saudi, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and everything together. Egypt, Misr, Africa, Spain, and everything. He was a president, but he was actually, if you look at his dress, there will be more than 17 patches. So that is what actually the zuhud, the true zahid. Yeah. So zuhud is not something bad. It's actually good. especially today, when I actually personally talk about consumption, I always say that we should have this zuhud based consumption, so that we can leave something for the next slide, sorry, for the people who comes next, right? If we are wasting all the resources, if we are wasting all the resources, and then we don't keep anything for tomorrow's futures generation, so we are actually doing a dhulm. We are actually doing injustice. So maybe you look at it and you see, okay, in Malaysia I'm living, I don't have any problem. Malaysia is a full of green, and then mashallah everything is here. But look at the world, then you understand. Because when there is a fire already started, and you are sitting at your home, and then you won't be sitting at your home when there is a fire is coming. What you will do, you will come out and you will stop the fire. It didn't reach your home, but still you will be providing some help and effort to stop the fire, because it should not come to your home. You will do anything to stop that fire. So yes, so the climate change is happening, the scars in resources are happening. And if we say that, okay, we don't have any issues in Malaysia, but tomorrow we don't know, the fire is actually already started coming. Tomorrow anything can happen. That's why being Zahid is not actually bad at all. All right, please try to have some characteristic of Zuhud. So now Tasawwuf, like I told you, there are many. For example, Al-Muhasibi, he wrote a book, amazing book. And then Junaid al-Baghdadi, and then Sheikh al-Jilani, then Suhrawardi, Imam Suhrawardi. All these scholars, they wrote many things in Zuhud based consumption. So they have books in economics but related to the consumption. The fifth, the last, according to Islahi, the last group of people, those scholars who combine the practical experience of business with philosophy, the teachings, I mean the foreign teachings, and also Islamic tradition. This last one also, nicely, they came later, but they started looking into the practical experiences of those people who actually combine together and then see. And from there, they also did some analysis. Like, for example, Al-Ishara ila Mahasin al-Tijara. It's a book called Al-Ishara ila Mahasin at-Tijara, written by al-Dimashqi. He actually saw that beauty, how people do this combination and what are the things. He did the analysis on it. So these are the these are the translation period. Next, we are going to talk about the retranslation period. What happened next? Huh? The retranslation period, which I could say from 12th century to 15th century, but again, the time is not necessarily well defined. So you need to understand how this translation actually took place. I mean, how it's been translation, how it's been retranslated. Now you already know how Muslim scholars got the translation work. Am I right? Until now you got it. How Muslim scholars got the translation work, and what are the things happened to the Muslim scholars when they got this translated work. But what they were doing with that work, I told you, like, they were doing the synthesizing. So most of the people like Ghazali, so many scholars, they started doing synthesizing. Some of them, they look into Islamic supremacy over Greek theology or any other philosophy. Some of them, they started, they are very much into, deeply influenced by philosophy, other philosophy, and then interpret Islamic articles. So now you can clearly see here, the Baitul Hikmah started adopting so many translations from Persia, Indian, and Greek. Then these are the five types of scholars were started to have a different opinion about it, and they started writing so many books. Okay, now the question mark: what happened next? What happened next? So that the scholasticism and mercantilism and the physiocracy and the classical economics and the modern mainstream economics came into existence. Okay, look, this is what happened. The translation happened. The scholars started writing so many things. Then the retranslation happened. Okay, like I told you, from Greek into Arabic, then from Arabic, because with the help of Christians and Jewish and other people who knew Arabic, for example, there were so many Arab Christians, there were so many Arab Jewish who knew Arabic. At the same time, they also know other languages. They are the one who actually started translating from Arabic to other European languages. So it happened like this. There were at the end of the Abbasid period, there was a Byzantine capital, Constantinople, we call it. In Constantinople, there were so many increasing work happened, the retranslation work. Before that, it was in Abbasid period, but later when it comes to Constantinople, then you see Abbasid period had they also had a headquarter in Damascus, headquarter in Egypt, headquarter in the other side, actually Persia. Then they also, at the end of the Abbasid period, they also had a headquarter in Constantinople. And when they had a headquarter in Constantinople, the last part of the Abbasid, they started retranslating so many work because Constantinople, Turkey, is actually very close to European countries. Look, knowledge came from India, it came from Persia, and then it was discussed, analyzed in Arab countries. Then from there, it went to Turkey. From Turkey, it is actually moving to European countries. So, how it happened? Increased the retranslation. The period before Western Renaissance is termed as a translation. Even Western Renaissance also, they have the term as a translation age, but our translation age even before that, because Muslim scholars' contribution to economic thought and analysis reached the Western scholastic scholars. You call it, or you can call it mainstream economic scholars, right? How it happened, as I told you, there was many joint work of Christian Muslims and Christians, Muslims and Jews, also Arab Christians, Arab Jews. Mostly they contributed to translation from Greek to Arabic, then from Arabic to other European languages, or you can say that um, Arabic to Castilian Catalan, or there's another language called Languedoc. Langue, D apostrophe OC. Okay, this Castilian Catalan, from Castilian Catalan, what happened actually? From Castilian Catalan, it became into Latin. Look, because Arabic and Latin didn't go straight. From Arabic to Castilian Catalan, from Castilian Catalan, or you can call it Languedoc, from there it converted into Latin. That's the reason why most of the astronomy, mathematics, medicines, also the kalam and philosophy, everything being translated into Latin. From Latin is actually what the Europeans started learning everything, right? Economic discussion mostly from mostly, like for example, if you look into Ibn Rushd, they call Aristotle. If sorry, Ibn Rushd, they call it Averroes. Averroes? Averroes is actually Ibn Rushd, right? So now if you look into his work, he totally talk about, because Ibn Rushd is the one of number, I think is number third, who were deeply influenced by the Greek idea. So he was the one who talks extensively about Aristotle's work in politics, in ethics and everything. And today, even West, they also really appreciate Ibn Rushd. But at the same time, in a way, Ibn Rushd was also misunderstood by Western scholars, because Ibn Rushd still believe in one truth, but they refer Ibn Rushd as believe in two kind of truths, so which is actually not so good if you look into If you read Ibn Rushd Arabic books, then you will understand. Lah. So that's how things were changed. Then, if you want to learn more, of course, I will inshallah put some materials in the in Italy. You can learn about how Europeans learn in Iraq, Syria, Egypt, Morocco, Andalusia from other Muslim teachers, how they written and spread their ideas through writings or teachings. These are the things. Again, the works continues. Islahi, mashallah, he has done a very amazing job in this. So the additional, inshallah, additional materials will be given to you. If you need, you can go and learn from there. We have one more topic to cover before we start the scholars. Before going to scholars, we need to talk about the Islamic economic thinking, right? We will talk about the idea of thinking, how it moved from one place to another place. Inshallah, maybe in the next class. Right. So let me just open the slide. Okay. This is what I told in the slides. This phases in development of Islamic economic thought. Then you have the foundation formation period, and then you have translation period. All right. So these are the few, if only very few notes I gave it to you here. Then this is also translation period, yeah, foundation and translation period. Then you have retranslation period, which I told you that in Greek or Arab Islamic ideas reached Europe through translation under other contracts, 6 to 9. Then political reality, then opposite rule, division, everything is here. All right. Then you have even Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, everyone will come under this, yeah. Then after that, what happened is actually, what happened after the retranslation period? That is something actually very much, we need to worry about it, because it is called imitation or stagnation period, according to Islahi. He says that these are the period, not many, because we've been completely out of, because these are the 500 years around. Not many things has been taught. Everything were there, but not in practice. We were in the war and so many other things, but still in so many other places other than Arab countries, there were so many other ulama. They came into existence. For example, we have Waliullah, we have Muhammad Akbar, and we have, mashallah, other scholars even in this region as well, right? And then the modern phase. The modern phase, what we call the current phase after 1932, today what we call modern Islamic economics. And then this one, actually, I think you already know about it, what we are doing today. And this is how actually I finished this one. Then I will talk about this Islamic economic thinking maybe in the next class. So this is your attendance. Okay, that's all from me.